The scent of azaleas, however potent, can now barely compete with the aroma of freshly baked croissants that wafts through the Parisian air each morning. Both scents, however disparate, evoke memories, though of vastly different chapters in my life. The azaleas remind me of the stifling conformity of my upbringing, of the constant struggle to bloom under the shadow of my sister, Delilah. The croissants. They represent freedom, a fresh start, a life lived entirely on my own terms. In a city that embraces individuality with an almost defiant joie de vivre. My name is Clara, and I'm 37. This story, however, truly begins a couple of years ago, when I was 35. And still trapped in the suffocating orbit of my family's expectations. I work in finance. As an investment analyst. It's a career that demands precision, a sharp mind, and a willingness to be unapologetically ambitious. I suppose I honed that ambition early on. As a survival mechanism. It was either that or be completely eclipsed by Delilah's dazzling, yet utterly superficial, charm. Delilah, my elder sister by 3 years, was everything I wasn't. She possessed the kind of effortless beauty that turned heads and opened doors. Blonde, vivacious, and perpetually surrounded by a coterie of admirers. She was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. I, on the other hand, was the practical one. The quiet one. The one who preferred the company of books and balance sheets to boisterous social gatherings. Our parents, God bless their well-intentioned but utterly oblivious souls, never seemed to acknowledge the glaring disparity in their treatment of us. Or, if they did, they certainly never let on. The car incident, a classic example of this dynamic, still evokes a flicker of resentment, even after all these years. For Delilah's 16th birthday, she received a brand new fire-engine red convertible sports car. A popular model, I believe. It was presented with the kind of theatrical flourish usually reserved for a movie premiere. Complete with a giant red bow, a squealing chorus of her friends, and our parents beaming with pride. My 16th birthday? I inherited Dad's ancient beige sedan. A large American model, to be precise. It had accumulated well over 180,000 miles, emitted a disconcerting rattle at idle, and possessed a disturbing tendency to stall at inopportune moments. Like in the middle of a busy intersection. It'll teach you responsibility, Clara, Dad had declared, clapping me on the shoulder with a mixture of awkwardness and misplaced optimism. Learning to handle a vintage vehicle will instill valuable life lessons. Indeed, it did. It taught me the intricacies of the local bus schedule, the importance of a reliable roadside assistance plan, and the art of maintaining a serene facade while internally screaming obscenities at the automotive gods. Meanwhile, Delilah was cruising around town, the wind whipping through her perfectly coiffed hair. The embodiment of carefree, teenage bliss. Delilah's life followed a predictable trajectory. She married her college sweetheart, Roger, immediately after graduation. Roger was a pleasant enough fellow, though somewhat lacking in substance. He worked in something vaguely related to sales. It involved a lot of jargon, motivational speeches, and, I suspect, a considerable amount of wishful thinking. They quickly produced 3 offspring, Penelope, now 10, Leo, 7, and little Finn, a perpetually sticky 4-year-old. They resided in a cramped, 3-bedroom apartment in a decidedly unfashionable part of town. Delilah, naturally, complained about it incessantly. The walls were too thin, the neighbors were too loud, the kitchen was too small. The super was unresponsive, the grievances were endless. My own path had diverged sharply. Through a combination of hard work, strategic planning, and a healthy dose of, my family would call it stinginess, I'd managed to create a comfortable, if somewhat solitary, existence. My closest friend from college, Sarah, came from a family that owned a portfolio of rental properties. They'd generously offered me a charming one-bedroom apartment in a beautifully maintained, pre-war building at a significantly reduced rate. They trusted me implicitly, and I, in turn, was the epitome of a responsible tenant. While Delilah had been handed everything on a silver platter, I'd learned the value of financial independence from my first part-time job shelving books at the local library. I'd meticulously saved every dollar I could. I brought my own lunch to work, rarely dined out, and relied on public transportation. My colleagues at the firm often teased me about my frugal habits, referring to me, behind my back, as Clara the miser. But I had a plan. A long-term vision. College had been another stark reminder of the inherent unfairness of our sibling dynamic. Delilah had her heart set on an exclusive and exorbitantly expensive private university. Our parents, without hesitation, covered the entire cost, tuition, room and board, and a monthly allowance that ensured she could maintain her impeccable wardrobe and social standing. I, on the other hand, spent my senior year of high school frantically applying for every scholarship imaginable. I sacrificed sleep, social events, and any semblance of a normal teenage life, maintaining a flawless GPA. It was my only ticket to a higher education. My long-term plan was simple: accumulate sufficient capital to make a down payment on a small house somewhere peaceful, quiet, ideally in the countryside. With remote work becoming increasingly prevalent at my firm, I only needed to be physically present in the office for key meetings. A tranquil, rural retreat seemed like the perfect antidote to the relentless pressure and noise of the city. One evening, after years of disciplined saving and strategic investing, I finally logged into my online banking account and stared at the figures. It was real. I had enough. Enough for a substantial down payment, enough for closing costs, enough for a modest contingency fund. The feeling was intoxicating. A potent blend of relief, pride, and a touch of disbelief. I was immersed in browsing real estate listings online, my heart leaping with excitement at each charming cottage and picturesque farmhouse that appeared on my screen when the phone rang. It was Mom. Her timing, as always, was uncanny. "Clara, darling, don't forget about dinner on Saturday," she said. Her voice laced with that subtle undercurrent of authority that always managed to irritate me. "Delilah and Roger will be there with the children. And please, for once, try to arrive on time." That Saturday, I arrived at my parents' imposing two-story colonial in the suburbs at precisely 5:03 p.m. The driveway was already packed with vehicles, including Delilah's minivan, a monstrous vehicle that seemed to perpetually exude the scent of stale snacks and spilled juice boxes. I was forced to park several houses down the street. The scene inside was utterly predictable. Children shrieked and ran in chaotic circles. My mother fluttered about like a hyperactive butterfly, and my father was ensconced in his customary armchair, hidden behind a newspaper, emerging only when dinner was announced. The usual litany of complaints permeated the air. Roger bemoaned his overbearing boss and the unrealistic deadlines he was constantly facing. Delilah lamented their cramped apartment and the children's incessant needs. Dad grumbled about the precarious state of the economy and the exorbitant price of gasoline. Mom punctuated the chaos with pointed observations about everyone's eating habits and portion sizes. I had long ago perfected the art of mental disengagement during these family gatherings. I discreetly checked my phone under the table, scrolling through the listing for a particularly appealing cottage I'd discovered. 2 bedrooms, a generous kitchen, and a stunning garden. The price was within my reach. The listing photos showcased a wraparound porch, ideal for a pair of rocking chairs. I could almost feel the warmth of the morning sun on my face as I sipped my coffee. "What's so captivating on that phone, Clara? You've hardly touched your dinner." Mom's voice, sharp and penetrating, cut through the background din. Her eyes, like a hawk's, missed nothing, despite the surrounding bedlam. I could have fabricated an excuse. I could have mumbled something about work. But perhaps it was the lingering warmth of the daydream still playing in my mind that compelled me to be truthful. Actually, I said, I'm looking at houses. I'm considering buying one. The silence that ensued was deafening. You could hear the ice cubes settling in the water glasses. Even the children seemed to sense that something significant had transpired. Penelope stopped mid-sentence in a story about her school play. Leo froze. His fork suspended halfway to his mouth. Even little Finn ceased banging his spoon against his high chair. Delilah's head snapped up so abruptly I feared she might sustain a whiplash injury. Roger's incessant droning about his boss abruptly ceased. Mom's hand hovered in mid-air, halfway to the salt shaker. Dad's newspaper slowly lowered, revealing his astonished expression. Buy a house? Mom repeated, as if she hadn't heard me correctly. You? Well, yes, I admitted, instantly regretting my candor. The way they were all staring at me. You'd think I'd announced plans to relocate to the moon. I'm just exploring options at the moment. Nothing concrete. What kind of house? Delilah asked, her voice retaining that strangely pointed tone she always employed when she felt threatened. It was the same tone she'd used when I'd outperformed her on the standardized tests, just before convincing our parents that I must have somehow cheated. I haven't really decided yet, I replied evasively, attempting to steer the conversation away from dangerous waters. But I could feel their minds whirring, the unspoken thoughts almost palpable in the air. My parents exchanged a significant look, the kind they'd honed over decades of marital communication. Delilah kept glancing at Roger, who had suddenly become intensely fascinated by his mashed potatoes. The usual dinnertime chatter soon resumed, but something had irrevocably shifted. The conversation felt strained, as if the actors had forgotten their lines and were desperately trying to improvise their way through the remainder of the scene. Even the children seemed to sense the underlying tension, their usual boisterousness noticeably subdued. The following week, my phone began buzzing with calls from Mom during a critical video conference. After her third attempt, I called her back during my lunch break, anticipating some sort of family emergency. Clara! Mom exclaimed, her voice practically quivering with excitement. I've found the perfect house for you. Martha from church told me about a listing in her neighborhood. It's absolutely ideal. I set down my half-eaten sandwich, a dull headache already beginning to form. Mom, I haven't even requested assistance in finding a house. But she was already in full flow, unstoppable. It has 5 bedrooms. No, 6. The master suite is enormous. And there are these darling children's rooms with built-in closets. I blinked. And the backyard. There's already a playground installed. Can you imagine? And the location is just perfect. Walking distance to St. Mary's Elementary and the public library. I rubbed my temples, attempting to maintain my composure. Mom, I appreciate you thinking of me, but that's not what I'm seeking at all. I desire a small place, in the country. Something cozy, just for me. I don't require multiple children's rooms, or a playground. Don't be absurd, she snapped, her excitement rapidly morphing into irritation. You can't just consider your own needs. You need to think about the future. This house is perfect. Martha says the owners are eager to sell quickly. After she hung up, Delilah began sending me a relentless stream of listings for large, family-oriented homes. Each subsequent message brought another 4 to 6 bedroom house, with multiple bathrooms, sprawling yards, and close proximity to schools and parks. By the 20th message, I'd ceased looking. It was abundantly clear they weren't listening to what I desired. Instead, I contacted a realtor, a woman named Amanda Shaw, who came highly recommended. During our initial consultation, I was struck by her attentiveness. I want something small, intimate, I explained. A country house, not too far from the city. With reliable internet access for remote work. Perhaps a small garden. Where I can cultivate herbs and vegetables. When I mentioned my price range, her eyes brightened. I believe I might have precisely what you're looking for. It just came on the market yesterday. The house she showed me was perfection. A charming, 2-bedroom cottage. Situated approximately 40 minutes outside the city. White clapboard siding. Dark green shutters, a wraparound porch with ample space. For those rocking chairs I'd envisioned. Sunlight streamed in through expansive windows, illuminating an open-plan living area. The kitchen wasn't large, but it had been tastefully updated with butcher-block countertops and modern appliances. A wood-burning fireplace dominated one wall of the living room. And I could already picture cozy winter evenings spent curled up beside it with a good book. Upstairs, there were 2 modestly sized bedrooms. And a bathroom with a clawfoot tub that I instantly adored. But it was the sunroom that truly captivated me. Windows on 3 sides overlooked a meticulously maintained garden. Complete with raised beds and a small greenhouse. I could immediately imagine myself spending weekends there. Surrounded by lush greenery and natural light. The owner was offering an incentive for a swift closing, and I accepted without hesitation. The following weeks were a whirlwind of paperwork, work obligations, and packing. I made a larger down payment than was strictly necessary. Ensuring manageable monthly payments, utilizing the funds I'd so diligently saved. Over the years. While my family undoubtedly perceived me as being parsimonious, I was, in reality, building my future. Once everything was finalized, I planned to announce the news at the next family dinner. Mom had just begun discussing another house Barbara next door is selling. She'll offer us, you, a favorable price, when I interrupted her. Actually, I said, unable to suppress my elation. Despite their previous attempts to derail my decision, I've already purchased a house. The silence was profound. Even Penelope, normally irrepressible, paused mid-gesture. I took a deep breath and began describing my new home, my voice filled with enthusiasm. Despite the mounting tension around the table. It's this exquisite cottage. About 40 minutes outside the city. 2 bedrooms, the most marvelous sunroom. And there's even a small greenhouse in the backyard. The previous owner had these magnificent raised garden beds. My father's fist slammed down on the table with such force that the water glasses rattled. Are you completely insane? He bellowed. I'd never witnessed him so enraged. Little Finn burst into tears at the abrupt noise. How dare you purchase a house without consulting us first? My mother's face had assumed an alarming shade of scarlet. After all those perfect family homes we identified. Why would I need to consult you about purchasing my own house, with my own money? I inquired, feeling as if I'd stumbled into some bizarre parallel universe. Because we had it all meticulously planned. Mom practically shrieked. Barbara's house would have been ideal. Right here in the neighborhood. Ample space for everyone. Space for everyone? I asked slowly, my bewilderment escalating. It's just going to be me residing there. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom and Dad exchanged glances. Delilah sat there with an uncharacteristically placid expression. Roger was suddenly deeply engrossed in his plate. Actually, Mom explained, in a tone that chilled me to the bone. The plan was for Delilah, Roger, and the children to reside there with you. I waited for the punchline. It never arrived. Delilah nodded, as if this were all perfectly reasonable. We're so terribly cramped in that apartment. Your house would provide us all with the space we desperately require. And since we wouldn't be burdened with rent or utility payments, we could finally begin to accumulate some savings. I looked around at their dead serious expressions. Dad's stern disapproval. Mom's righteous indignation. Delilah's entitled expectation. Roger's awkward avoidance. A lifetime of memories flooded back. Every instance where Delilah had been granted her every wish, while I'd toiled twice as hard for half the recognition. Every occasion where my accomplishments had been minimized, while her slightest achievements were lauded. You all just presumed I would purchase a house for Delilah's family to inhabit? Well, naturally. Mom threw up her hands, as if I were being deliberately obtuse. That's what family does. This isn't assistance. This is expecting me to house 5 individuals, without so much as inquiring. You're being unconscionably selfish. Delilah shrieked, her composure finally crumbling. The children are forced to share bedrooms. Finn's crib is situated in our bedroom. It's profoundly unfair to them. You must rescind this preposterous purchase immediately. Mom commanded, her voice tight with the authority she'd wielded over me for 35 years. Barbara's house is ideal. Right in the neighborhood. No. I rose, my chair scraping against the floor. The word emerged with unexpected force, carrying the weight of decades of suppressed resentment. Chaos erupted. Mom leaped to her feet, gesticulating wildly. Dad's voice roared. The children commenced crying. But we'll be so confined. Delilah wailed, as if I hadn't spoken. Penelope has ballet lessons. Leo has soccer practice. You're not going to be confined anywhere, because you're not residing in my house. I stated calmly. None of you are. Ever. Is that sufficiently clear? They stared at me as if I'd sprouted a second head. The entitled astonishment on their faces was almost comical. How can you be so callous to your own sister? Mom demanded, clutching her pearls, her voice trembling with outrage. I retrieved my purse and headed for the door, their shouts escalating behind me in a cacophony of demands and accusations. I couldn't bear to hear another word. I got into my car and drove home, in a daze, their entitled expectations still reverberating in my ears. The aggressive pounding on my apartment door commenced while I was packing up the kitchen. The coffee mug I was wrapping in newspaper slipped from my grasp but landed safely on a mound of packing paper. Open this door immediately. My father's voice thundered through the wood. We know you're inside. I froze, bubble wrap still clutched in my fingers. More pounding ensued. Go away. I shouted back. I'm not engaging in this discussion any further. Don't you dare address us in that manner. Dad's fist caused the door to rattle in its frame. We raised you to exhibit more respect. My hands were trembling as I picked up the phone. If you don't vacate the premises immediately, I'm contacting the authorities. I'm serious. I pulled up the keypad and deliberately pressed digits, ensuring they could hear the beeping. I'm dialing right now. Dad's curse was cut short by Mom's sudden intake of breath. We're departing. Mom's voice had become as frigid as a January wind. But this is far from over. You're making a grave error in judgment. I slid down against the wall, my heart pounding, after hearing their footsteps receding down the hallway. An hour later, Delilah dispatched the first text message. It included a photograph of Penelope and Leo squashed together on their shared bunk bed. Observe how little space they possess, the caption read. Penelope lacks even a desk for her homework. When I didn't respond, another photograph appeared. Finn's crib, crammed into the corner of Delilah and Roger's bedroom. He awakens every time we retire for the evening. This is profoundly unjust to him. As I continued to ignore her, Delilah's communications became increasingly hostile. They started arriving at all hours. 2 a.m. 4 a.m. 6 a.m. You always were Dad's least favored child. Mom weeps herself to sleep because of your actions. I trust you're content, all alone in that spacious house, while your nieces and nephew endure hardship. I blocked her number. then her profile on the social media platform, then her account on the photo sharing app. But she persisted in finding new avenues to contact me. Creating new accounts, utilizing Roger's phone, even fabricating fictitious email addresses. The phone calls began originating from various sources. First, it was Aunt Mildred. "My dear, I just learned of the situation with your sister. Surely you can find it within your heart to extend a helping hand to family." Uncle Gregory was next. "Child, you must contemplate what truly matters in this life. Family takes precedence." Susan, my mother's closest confidant. "Your mother is utterly distraught. How could you inflict such pain upon your own family?" Even my former high school English teacher, Mrs. Peterson, whom my mother still encountered at church. "I always perceived you as such a compassionate student. I'm profoundly disappointed to learn of this unfortunate circumstance with your sister." They all conveyed the same message. I was selfish, heartless, cruel. I should relinquish my home, my aspirations, my independence, to accommodate Delilah. None of them seemed to question why Delilah's living situation was my burden to bear. After 2 weeks of unrelenting harassment, I'd reached my limit. I visited my cellular carrier and changed my phone number, providing it solely to my employer and a select few trusted friends who hadn't taken sides in this debacle. Moving day was blissfully uneventful. I engaged a moving company I'd never utilized before, ensuring that my family couldn't trace my address through familiar local services. The movers were efficient and professional, and by dusk, I was standing in my new living room, surrounded by boxes and boundless possibilities. That first night in my cottage, I sat on my porch with a cup of herbal tea, listening to the chirping of crickets and observing the stars emerge. No traffic noise. No sirens. No family drama. Merely tranquility. I felt something inside me finally release. A tension I hadn't realized I'd been harboring for years. I occasionally peruse their updates on the social media platform. Delilah posts passive-aggressive status updates concerning familial betrayal and selfish siblings. Mom's thinly veiled posts regarding ungrateful offspring and familial obligations. Relatives and family friends comment. Everyone aligning themselves, without possessing the complete narrative. But here's the salient point: none of it perturbs me any longer. Their commentary cannot penetrate my new sanctuary. I've transformed the second bedroom into a home office, positioning my monitors to face the window, allowing me to observe the birds visiting the feeder I've erected. The previous owners' raised garden beds are now flourishing with herbs and vegetables. My initial foray into gardening has proven surprisingly fruitful. For the first time in my existence, I'm living entirely on my own terms. And it feels profoundly liberating. Then, something unexpected transpired. Remember that significant investment project I'd been diligently pursuing, remotely, from my new abode? It yielded substantial returns. My manager summoned me to a virtual meeting to inform me that not only was I receiving a considerable bonus, but I was also under consideration for a director-level position. The tranquility and concentration afforded by my new environment had enabled me to excel professionally in ways I'd never deemed feasible. Liberated from the constant familial interruptions and emotional strain, I discovered myself proposing innovative concepts and assuming leadership roles organically. This professional triumph, however, precipitated an intriguing development. Delilah's apartment complex was acquired by a developer who intended to convert it into upscale condominiums. All the tenants received eviction notices, with a 60-day period to vacate. I ascertained, through the familial grapevine, that Delilah and Roger were encountering difficulties in securing a new residence that aligned with their budgetary constraints. The timing couldn't have been more ironic. My promotion entailed a substantial salary increment, and I elected to utilize my bonus to place a down payment. on a charming vacation property in the mountains. It's an investment, in truth, as property values in that locale have been appreciating exponentially. One day, I received a meticulously worded email from Roger, not Delilah, notably. He delineated their predicament and inquired whether I might be amenable to discussing accommodation arrangements once more. The former me might have experienced a twinge of guilt. Despite everything, I might have contemplated extending assistance. However, I simply forwarded them a few links to local apartment listings that corresponded to their budgetary parameters and wished them success in their search. Mom adopted a divergent approach. She appeared at my office building, I presume. She obtained the address from my professional networking profile, with tears glistening in her eyes. She expounded upon how she and Dad were grappling with their retirement funds and had perpetually relied on the family uniting to provide mutual support during their golden years. I listened attentively. Subsequently, I elucidated that my financial advisor had cautioned against commingling familial and financial matters. Her countenance assumed that familiar shade of crimson, but this time, within the professional confines of my corporate lobby, she was unable to create a disturbance. The family's campaign on the social media platform took a new twist. They're now disseminating posts concerning affluent individuals who've become detached from their origins, and articles pertaining to toxic individualism and the erosion of contemporary society. My aunt even authored a lengthy post on the social media platform regarding how material wealth can alter individuals, which garnered hundreds of sympathetic responses. However, what they remain oblivious to is that my professional accomplishments have garnered the attention of executive recruiters. Several prestigious firms, including one in Paris, have expressed an interest in engaging my services. The prospect of placing an ocean and the romantic, cultural tapestry of Paris between myself and this familial drama is becoming increasingly alluring. My new greenhouse is flourishing. I've commenced cultivating exotic orchids, which are delicate and necessitate patience and meticulous attention, akin to nurturing a career or establishing personal boundaries. I'm discovering that the most gratifying endeavors in life require time and effort to cultivate. I've joined a local gardening club, which has evolved into a marvelous source of camaraderie. These individuals are entirely unaware of my familial tribulations. They merely perceive me as the woman who contributes homegrown herbs to meetings and poses insightful inquiries regarding soil pH levels. It's refreshing to be evaluated solely on the basis of who I am, rather than my willingness to sacrifice my existence for the convenience of others. I hosted my inaugural dinner party in my new residence. Colleagues, gardening acquaintances, neighbors, congregated around my dining table, partaking in delectable cuisine and stimulating conversation. No one requested anything of me, save perhaps the recipe for my herb-crusted salmon. The evening was replete with laughter, intelligent discourse, and mutual respect, all the attributes that familial gatherings should embody, but invariably fail to achieve. As I observed my guests enjoying themselves on the porch, fireflies illuminating the yard beyond, I comprehended something pivotal. I haven't merely acquired a house. I've constructed a life. A life that is unequivocally my own, unencumbered by the weight of others' expectations and entitlements. Let them disseminate their passive-aggressive missives. Let them expound upon familial duty and obligation. I'm far too preoccupied with flourishing to be perturbed. The denouement of my personal triumph unfolded. Delilah and Roger proved incapable of securing a new apartment. Their credit assessment revealed some disconcerting findings. They're presently residing temporarily with our parents. All 3 children crammed into the guest bedroom. The prevailing atmosphere is strained, to say the least. Particularly with Delilah incessantly griping concerning the paucity of space and the inherent iniquity of it all. Concurrently, I received a formal offer for the director-level position at our Paris office. The compensation package is extraordinary, encompassing a resplendent company-provided apartment in the 7th arrondissement, mere steps from the Eiffel Tower. When I disseminated my acceptance on the professional networking platform, the professional felicitations inundated my inbox. The dichotomy between my colleagues' genuine support. The most gratifying moment, however, transpired when Dad telephoned. His voice lacked its customary authority. He commenced by casually inquiring about this Parisian folly, but it soon became apparent why he was calling. The recent market volatility had significantly diminished their retirement savings. They'd evidently been intending to liquidate their home and relocate to reside with Delilah's family in the residence they'd anticipated I would procure. We invariably presumed we'd all remain together, he stated, his voice uncharacteristically tremulous. Your mother and I are not becoming any younger. I maintained a professional and detached demeanor. I possess a superlative financial advisor. She specializes in retirement planning for discerning individuals. I shall forward you her contact information via email. What my family remains ignorant of is that I've already instituted arrangements to manage my mountain property as a high-end vacation rental. The projected revenue is impressive. More than sufficient to defray Delilah's entire monthly rent, paradoxically. However, it's not intelligence I intend to divulge. I hosted a farewell garden soiree for my local acquaintances. The greenhouse was in full bloom, the orchids providing a resplendent backdrop. As I observed my guests reveling, someone remarked upon how profoundly I'd transformed since relocating here. How I appeared, more self-assured, more serene. Later that evening, whilst packing for Paris, I stumbled upon an antiquated photo album. Therein resided an image of a teenage Delilah receiving her brand-new convertible sports car, and myself, standing in the periphery, adjacent to Dad's ancient sedan. The recollection no longer elicits a pang of resentment. Rather, it serves as a poignant reminder of how far I've traversed. I'm retaining my rustic cottage. It shall serve as my refuge, my sanctuary. Upon my visits to the States, the garden shall be tended by a delightful retired couple from my gardening collective. The house shall remain my haven, untainted by familial discord. Tomorrow, I embark upon a flight to Paris. My family remains oblivious. They shall ascertain the truth when they peruse my updates on the social media platform. From the Jardin du Luxembourg, or along the Seine, Delilah will likely disseminate pronouncements concerning sisters who forsake their families. Mom will share articles pertaining to expatriates who rue abandoning their loved ones. But reclining here, in my sunroom, one final time prior to my early morning departure, observing the sunset imbue the sky with vibrant hues, I experience nothing save profound peace. Sometimes, the most profound victory entails not engaging in the battle, but electing to depart from the battlefield altogether. Let them contend with their cramped living conditions and financial tribulations. I shall be far too engrossed in savoring my new existence in Paris to peruse their social media updates. Sometimes the most exquisite form of retribution is living exceptionally well. The city lights are beginning to twinkle, and somewhere I can hear the faint, romantic strains of an accordion. It's a Parisian serenade, a soundtrack to my new beginning. I raise a glass of Sancerre to the Eiffel Tower, a silent toast to freedom, to independence, and to the audacious act of choosing one's own happiness, no matter the cost. My life, mon propre vie, is finally, truly, my own.